In Brazil, the Supreme Court accepted charge against alleged accused in the murder of Rio de Janeiro City Councilwoman Marielle Franco. In Lebanon, Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah emphasized that the scope of a ceasefire on the Lebanese, Yemeni, and Iraqi fronts will depend on ending the aggression against Gaza Strip. On Wednesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in Vietnam after a historic visit to North Korea. Hello, welcome to From the South. I am Irma Shelton from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. On Tuesday, the Brazilian Supreme Court accepted the charge against a legislator, an official, and a former police chief who are accused of ordering the assassination of Marielle Franco in 2018. The accused are federal legislator José Brazao, his brothers Domingo Brazaos, who is an official of the Rio de Janeiro Court of Accounts, and Rivaldo Barbosa, the former chief of the Rio de Janeiro Civil Police. The members of the first panel of the Supreme Court unanimously accepted the charge after analyzing the accusations presented by the prosecutor's office and considering that there are consistent indications of the responsibility of these peoples in Franco's assassination. The prosecutor's office added that these citizens are involved with the paramilitary mafias known as militias that operate in Rio de Janeiro poor neighborhoods. Also in Brazil, the processing of the bill that equates abortion after 22 weeks of gestation with the crime of homicide is paused. The president of the Brazilian Chamber of Deputies, Arthur Lira, declared on Tuesday that the bill wants to be processed urgently and announced that the creation of a representative committee to discuss it with the Brazilian society. Last week, Lira included the document in the legislative agenda without prior notice and without specifying its number. Parliamentarians denounced that this work put the bill under analysis in the legislative plenary without having gone through an exhaustive review in commissions, and added that this endangered a legal right won by women and girls in the country, abortion in case of rape or risk to life. On Wednesday, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, in the framework of his annual report, emphasized that the policies on the current Argentinian government threaten to undermine the protection of human rights in the South American nation.
Proposed and adopted measures risk undermining human rights protection. These include cuts to public spending, particularly affecting the most marginalized, the announced closure of state institutions dedicated to women's rights and access to justice, and an instruction from the Minister of Foreign Affairs to suspend participation in all events abroad related to the 2030 agenda. I urge the authorities to place human rights at the center of their policy making to build a more cohesive and inclusive society. This also means full respect for the right to peaceful assembly and freedom of expression.
Former Peruvian President Alberto Fujimori registered in the political party Fuerza Popular, FP, increasing speculation about a hypothetical presidential candidacy for 2026. On Wednesday, the politician himself published a video on his social networks to announce his adhesion. The former president released late last year thanks to a controversial humanitarian pardon received in 2017, remains far from politics after unleashing a political earthquake for some statements on Peruvian current affairs. However, both analysts and journalists have expressed that the possibility of a candidacy is not excluded, despite the fact that he was sentenced to 25 years in prison for crimes against humanity and faces another judicial process. At the same time, FP is promoting a bill that could benefit him. Also in Peru, a group of protesters went on a 48-hour strike against citizens' insecurity and government negligence. The protest was convened by the leaders of the social organizations whose strike is taking place in Wednesday and Thursday in the city of Juliaca. The demonstrators set fire to and evicted two nightclubs because, according to them, they are places where crimes are committed. In this sense, they assure that this is only the beginning of the protests against insecurity. On Wednesday, the Colombian government is set to complete the delivery of 11.2 billion Colombian pesos, approximately $2,008,000 in judicial compensation to victims of the army conflict in the northwest of the country. These reparations, which on this occasion are being delivered to the inhabitants of Rio Sucio in the region of Chocó and Turbo in Antioquia, also are part of the compensation order by the Colombian state to repair the damage suffered during the war. According to the victims unit, these compensations are included in the sentences handed down by the Justice and Peace against Freddy Rendon of the Elmer Cardenas Bloc and Rodrigo Zapata of the Southwest Bloc, former members of the paramilitary organization's United Self-Defense Force of Colombia. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro, during his national tour in the state of Miranda, inaugurated the Marizapa soccer field and rejected the interference of the United States in the Venezuelan electoral process. The head of state was received by the people of Miranda with a cultural event at the monument to the Santos Inocentes de Caucagua. During his visit, Maduro inaugurated infrastructure in the municipality of Acevedo, among them the new soccer field, to promote the practice of this export discipline that will benefit more than 1,900 children and youngsters of the community. The National Executive also emphasized that the United States wants to appoint an ally of the extreme right to take control of the country's oil, but they will not allow it.
A man named Palmieri of the Gringos came out and speaks as if the Gringos were the owners of Venezuela. You want a coward to be president and give our riches to the Gringos, Mr. Palmieri? Government of the United States, if you want oil from Venezuela, you must pay the market price. The oil belongs to Venezuela, not to the Gringos.
Meanwhile, popular mobilizations continue in Venezuela in rejection of the United States sanctions and in support of President Nicolás Maduro. Let's review the details of a mobilization in popular sectors of Caracas. Our correspondent Leonel Retamal with the details.
con pintada de murales, bailes típicos.
With the painting of murals, typical dances, popular religiosity, and cultural expressions, a mobilization took place in the popular parish of La Candelaria, which seeks to activate participation and the vote in favor of President Nicolás Maduro.
Y a la señora violenta no se evita que no va, porque aquí manda el pueblo con el poder popular. Por eso el 21 vamos a votar y el presidente, te lo digo, es Nicolás.
In support of President Nicolás Maduro's campaign, as he said, media, social networks, streets and walls, the campaign is being publicized weekly, day by day, painting murals. Our Gallo Pinto, Nicolás Maduro, who is going to win again this time? Well, here we are in the area of Sarria, a very popular area of Caracas and proudly from here. Here, we are going to demonstrate many typical dances and invite everyone to come and participate.
The Gallo Pinto is an expression that has been popularized in phrases, songs and symbols representing the candidate in defiance of imperialism and sanctions. This was a work that was done jointly with the people in charge of culture in the party, plus the Cabinet of Culture of Candelaria. We all worked together to support our president, and well, what we came up with was to make this rooster and show the world that our roosters are here. All marches are called against US interference and sanctions, one of the main stumbling blocks to public and private development in recent years.
We, in all the marches that we have taken part in, we are mainly asking the empire to stop the sanctions and the blockade. Nevertheless, we continue with the sanctions and the blockade, and we continue to move forward. We are building with our own bare hands. They have bet on taking away what is ours, and they are using, since they can't use the democratic way, since they can't remove President Nicolás Maduro through democratic means. So, well, they are looking for a way to take away our property. They are blocking us. They are taking everything, but just the same, we the people are stiff, and we have endured years of sanctions.
President Maduro continues his tour across different regions of the country, disseminating the government program, delivering works, and committing to new projects for the next few years of his administration. Leonel Retamal and Marcos da Silva, teleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
In Haiti, the number of displacement due to gun siege has increased by 60% in the last 3 months. A report published on Tuesday by the International Organization for Migration shows that the number of internally displaced people has decreased from more than 362,000 at the beginning of March to more than 578,000 to date, out of a population of 10 million inhabitants. According to the report, the increase in displacement of Haitians is largely due to the people fleeing from Port-au-Prince, the center of gang violence, to other provinces that lack sufficient resources to care for the displaced. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. In Palestine, authorities denounced on Wednesday the killing of 11 people in Gaza after a missile launch by Israeli forces from a drone hit them. Also in the Alam traffic circle in the city of Rafah, 2 people were killed, rising the number of civilians attacked and victims to 23, while 2 Palestinians were killed in an artillery bombardment by the Israeli occupation. The total known casualties of the Israeli genocide in Palestine exceed 37,000 people, with women and children making up the majority of more than 85,000 people injured. On Wednesday, the Palestinian Prisoners Society reported that at least 90 civilians, including women and children, were arrested since the beginning of the Muslim holiday of El Adha last Sunday. PPS said that the number of Palestinians detained since the onset of Israel's relentless aggression on October 7, 2023, has reached 9,280, including children and women. The detainees either were detained and taken by the army from their homes and at military checkpoints or forced under pressure to hand themselves to Israel. These detentions campaigns come amidst the comprehensive aggression launched by the occupation against the Palestinian people as a retaliatory measure which fall under the crime of collective punishment. In Lebanon, Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah emphasized that the scope of a ceasefire on the Lebanese, Yemeni, and Iraqi fronts will depend on ending the aggression against Gaza Strip. To confront the attacks of the Zionist-Israeli entity, the Hezbollah spokesman pointed out that the Tel Aviv hid its losses while enumerating 42 Israeli settlements that are evacuated in its entirety. While he indicated that the actions against Gaza affects the course of negotiations. In this regard, he stated that the movement is ready to respond to the illegal Israeli attacks.
The solution is clear: for a ceasefire on the Lebanese front, a ceasefire on the Yemeni front, a ceasefire on the Iraqi front. There is only one way to achieve this, and that is through an end to the war and the aggression on Gaza and on our people in Gaza.
Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah said the movement is willing to respond to all illegal Israel attacks.
Israel knows that no place in the entity will be safe from our missiles and our drones, and our strikes are not indiscriminate. Every missile is targeted, every drone is targeted, and the proof of that is the HUD. It knows that we have a list of targets, and we have the ability to reach these targets, which will shake the foundations of the entity.
The heavy rains associated with Tropical Storm Alberto over Mexican territory have already left at least 3 people dead in the northern state of Nuevo Laredo. The governor of the state, Samuel Garcia, confirmed that 3 minors died in that entity in different incidents registered on Wednesday by the tropical cyclone, whose center should enter Mexican territory in the coming hours at a point between the states of Tamaulipas and Veracruz, and is expected to lose strength to become a depression in the evening in Thursday. In Bangladesh and India, landslides caused by heavy monsoon rains leave 15 dead, several injured, and millions displaced. 8 civilians were killed in southern Bangladesh, the world's largest refugee settlement, on Wednesday. Authorities report that hundreds of people were displaced from areas considered at high risk. Meanwhile, in India, at least 6 people died due to floods and landslide on Tuesday night. The waters exceed the dangerous level in the Kopili, one of India's largest rivers, leaving more than 16,000 people affected by the weather conditions in the Assam region. We have a final short break. coming up. But before, we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. It's final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in Vietnam after a historic visit to North Korea. The Russian president landed in Hanoi, Vietnam, kicking off his 2 days visit to the South Asian nation. The trip is part of Putin's Asian tour and is aimed at strengthening cooperation in trade, economic relations, as well as discussing Russian and Vietnamese approaches to outstanding global issues, among other topics. In this context, he is expected to hold meetings with the Vietnamese counterpart to Lam, Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh, General Secretary of the Communist Party Nguyen Phu Trong, and other senior officials. Russian President Vladimir Putin was received Thursday at the presidential palace in Hanoi by Vietnamese President Thu Lan upon his arrival in Vietnam for a state visit. The Russian leader is scheduled to meet with Communist Party General Secretary Nguyen Phu Trong and other officials. The evening program will continue with visits to the martyrs' monuments at the mausoleum, where the remains of Vietnamese independence hero President Ho Chi Minh are laid to rest, to whom he will pay tribute. Putin and his entourage, including Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Deputy Prime Minister, a courtesy call on National Assembly Chairman Tran Tam Man before meeting with leaders of the Vietnamese-Russia Friendship Association and Vietnamese graduates from Vietnam. Finally, Putin will attend a state banquet in his honor before returning home. In Ukraine, Mikhail Podolyak, advisor to the head of Zelensky's office, reacted to the new treaty between Russia and North Korea, saying that the sanctions towards Pyongyang have completely stopped working. Podolyak commented on his X account that the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty signed on Wednesday between Moscow and Pyongyang during Russian President Vladimir Putin's official visit to North Korea represents a blatant reversal of the sanctions imposed on the Asian country, and Podolyak also asked the United Nations and other international organizations why there has been no reaction on their part regarding the signing of these new agreements, adding that their silence is extremely eloquent and deafeningly noisy. In Somalia, the death toll for cholera rises to 123 since January. The Ministry of Health and Human Services and the World Health Organization said in joint epidemiological report released in Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia, that more than 14,000 cholera cases with a 1% case fatality rate have been reported this year. According to the WHO, Somalia has an ongoing cholera outbreak which has become worse since the floods of December 2023, which destroyed sanitation facilities and caused further displacement, although the report released by the WHO said that there was a notable decrease in cholera cases in the second week of June compared to report cases in the first week. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I am Irma Shelton. Thank you for watching.